Dan Illman, Matt Bernier for Weekend Wrap, taking a look back at Saturday's Grade 1 $1 million Arkansas Derby, major prep race for the Kentucky Derby, and it was do or die time for 2-year-old champion Classic Empire off his disappointing 3-year-old debut, off the trials and tribulations since that race. He's in post position 2. He's number 2, and they break from the gate in the Arkansas Derby, and Classic Empire is going to find himself in a little bit of traffic throughout.
Got into a little bit of a tight spot here going into the first turn. I don't think it was a disaster like some people have made it out to be, but certainly a little bit tight, and for a horse that can kind of be his own worst enemy, I can understand why people think that was a good thing that he was able to overcome it.
We're going to line up on the front end going into the first turn, and the horse in those lime green silks is Conquest Mo Money, who ran second in the Sunland Derby in a good performance. And listen, he had to hustle from this outside post. He's involved with a big long shot, Grandpa's Dream, and they're going a legitimate pace, 22-3, 46-4.
Yeah, you know, you can't fault what the rider did. He had no choice, I think, from the outside, and you could make the argument just straight away, as opposed to Malagasy, who's the second choice in this race and the Rebel winner. They had very comparable trips, and Malagasy was no match for Conquest Mo Money. This was a good effort.
Malagasy, the number 12 in those red and green silks. You see him parked in the four-path on the outside. He had to lose ground from where he was starting, the far outside post position. The connections had to be pleased with this spot, however. And you see Classic Empire. I think the plan for Julian wasn't exactly to be in tight and in among horses like this. He wanted to follow Malagasy because that was the horse to beat.
Yeah, certainly. And you're right. This probably wasn't the ideal situation. But then again, I mean, if you're concerned about that, you're going to have to deal with that and then some 3 weeks from now. I don't think, all things considered, it was a terrible trip.
Malagasy and Conquest Mo Money right now are in a pitched battle. You saw Untrapped loop up on the far outside. He's going to flatten out. Classic Empire tips to the outside, and this is where Classic Empire's class, I think, really shows. He changes leads. He's on his way. You see Conquest Mo Money drifting. Malagasy is tired. Looking at Lee has been weaving around down towards the inside. He's going to come out late. Classic Empire, though, is really digging, as is Conquest Mo Money. Let's give that horse credit as well. A little bit hop back to the left lead right there for Classic Empire. But he was best.
Yeah, he was the best horse in the race. Going into it, we thought that if he ran his race, he was just simply better than everyone. I think it was workmanlike. I don't think it was a superstar effort, really, and I could make the case that it was one of the sort of middling efforts of the 3-year-old prep season. You got a 94 buyer, going to certainly need to improve. The 115 Timeform US rating, it's not good enough right now. He's going to need to step forward, and now the question becomes, is this enough for you or anyone else to back this horse as one of the choices in the Kentucky Derby 3 weeks from now?
That's a major question. From a pedigree standpoint, it shouldn't be an issue. He's by Pioneer of the Nile, who of course sired Triple Crown winner American Pharaoh. He's the third stakes winner out of this Cat Thief mare. A $475,000 yearling is Classic Empire. Okay, how tight did Mark Casse have him for this race? You have to remember that he only had one start since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That race did not go according to plan. I believe it was the Holy Bull at Gulfstream Park. He emerged with a foot problem, then didn't want to train. There were all kinds of issues. And Casse had a very delicate sort of training job to do here. He didn't want to squeeze the lemon dry completely and have nothing left for the Kentucky Derby, but he needed to get a good hard race into Classic Empire. And I think he succeeded on both fronts.
I would agree with that. I just would be stunned if this horse was 85%. I mean, I think he...
Probably 95%.
I think he was pretty darn close to having the screws cranked on. And again, I can't knock the effort. It wasn't bad by any stretch. It was just one of those things that now on reputation, and now again, look, it was good to see him get back to a winning effort. Let's be honest. We needed to see if this horse still had it in him, because it had been a long time between drinks. And I only mean that time-wise, not, he only had one race since the Breeders' Cup. I just don't know, for me anyway, is this enough for me to look at him and say at 7-2 as the favorite or 4-1 as a co-favorite for the Kentucky Derby? I don't know that this is enough going into a race like that. 3 weeks, 1 true mile and an eighth race against, let's be honest, not the greatest field. I don't know if it's enough for me to buy in.
That's a very fair point. Price obviously has to be paramount in terms of betting any race, especially a 20-horse cavalcade like the Kentucky Derby. Classic Empire behaved himself, and that's half the battle with him, because we know he can be willful, he can be obstinate, and he can just throw a fit. Does that allay fears that he's going to throw a fit with all those people at Churchill Downs on Derby Day? For me, from a handicapping perspective, I wonder if we think too much and put too much weight into these things. We can't control them. We have to go off the dope.
I have to be honest. I mean, that's one of those things. If you just add that into your handicapping, you don't know. No one knows. I at least know what they've done on the racetrack in the past. Now, apparently, I believe that the crowd was around 65,000 Saturday, so there was a good group of people down there. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to what he'll face as far as a crowd is concerned 3 weeks from now with all the pomp and circumstance, I mean, you're probably going to have 170,000 people at Churchill Downs. I can't bring that into consideration unless it's a horse that is an absolute disaster. Like, remember FNX when he was around crowds, we knew the minute he saw something he was going to completely flip out. Classic Empire has just been a bit of a problem child. It's not that he's been a dumpster fire as far as getting spooked. He does what he wants to do. That to me, they're two different animals.
We saw him hop back to his left lead about 100 yards from the wire, right when he engaged Conquest Mo Money. I usually don't like to see that, especially when it's completely foreign. We've never seen really Classic Empire do that in his career. But in this case, I think I'm going to be a lot more forgiving. I thought this track was really tiring at Oaklawn on Saturday. Again, he hadn't raced, and he had every reason to be tired in the stretch after somewhat of an eventful trip.
Yeah, I'm torn on it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and call it a positive. I'm certainly not going to say that that's something I like to see, but it's also worth noting, if you take a look at the head-on, the inside two runners were drifting out a little bit. They didn't bump into him, but I wonder if them coming out, maybe that just kind of threw him off a little bit. I guess just going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, watching the replay, I saw a lot of people on Twitter immediately after saying, oh my goodness, just an unbelievable effort, all the issues he had to overcome. If you think that was a lot to overcome, what are you going to do 3 weeks from now? Because if all of a sudden you draw post 12 and they're coming in on you and you're in amongst horses, I'm sorry, if this is all of a sudden going to be the race that, he can overcome anything. Well, he's going to have to overcome that and then some 3 weeks from now, isn't he?
Oh, he's going to do 19 horses.
Yeah.
He's not a speed horse.
Mile and a quarter.
Depends on the post position, obviously. Mile and a quarter. He's going to be in and among horses, but it was nice to see him face that challenge and come out unscathed with a nice performance. Malagasy was the disappointment. I know he was saddled with a tough outside post position. I know he was in the four-path around the first turn and chasing a fairly hot pace, but he just couldn't get past Conquest Mo Money in the stretch. And I think a lot of folks were worried about this distance going in. Yeah. I think a lot of folks are worried about this distance going out. And if he shows up in the Derby, and he's certainly got the points to do so, he's got to go another eighth of a mile.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes to the Derby, he's a complete toss for me. No, he's a nice horse, but let's also call it for what it is. He's not getting any faster either. I don't think the distance helps him, but he's just strung together a bunch of low 90s. He's not getting any better right now. I think he needs to turn back in distance. And if they go to the Derby, for me, he is an easy throw out.
Beaten third choice in the race, was on track. He took a good amount of money in this race to be 6-1. He made a very strong bid, as you saw, while very wide on the turn, and he flattened out. He's another horse. I think it's time now to cut him back.
I have to be honest, he's the horse that I want coming out of this race, not for the Derby, though. I mean, if you turn him back to a one-turn mile, I think he is the horse to beat, arguably, going into a race like the Pat Day Mile, or if they wait a little while for a race like the Woody Stevens, because he has ability. He's just been pushing his limits as far as distance is concerned.
Let's talk about the second, third, and fourth place finishers, beginning with the runner-up, Conquest Mo Money. I thought this was an extremely courageous race. Speed wasn't holding most of the day at Oaklawn. He was involved in a pitched battle from the start. He really never got a breather. Malagasy came up to him on the outside, and it looked like he was going to put Conquest Mo Money away. And although Conquest Mo Money got drifty, he never really quit. This was a big-time performance for a horse that's still not supplemented to the Kentucky Derby, although this runner-up check, $200,000, gets him in.
Yeah, it sounds like the decision will come sometime this week, in the next few days. I like everything I've seen from this horse more and more. You know, it was almost going into the Sunland Derby. I said, I mean, how good can he actually be? They paid $8,000 for this Uncle Mo. He just continues to take steps forward. He's one of those that you look at his pattern, he hasn't taken a step backwards from a buyer's standpoint. Got his final eighth of a mile in 12-2. Classic Empire was in 12-1. It's not like this horse started, sure, he was getting tired, but he had every right to get tired. He was out there on the front end. I'm not saying I'm going to pick him, but if all of a sudden there's a scenario where he's pressing the pace in the Kentucky Derby and he inherits it turning for home, he's done a lot of good things. It's hard for me to knock anything he's done. And you know what? This is the kind of story that I think is a positive story that everyone should be hoping works out well.
And he's got a lot of try in him.
Yeah, he tries hard.
Sold for $8,500, but he does have that Uncle Mo on top as he goes for 2 Kentucky Derbies in a row. That would be something.
That would be unbelievable.
First 2 crops, 2 Derby winners for the sensational Uncle Mo. I know you're a big fan of looking at Lee. Now, we saw him weaving and running in the stretch sideways, which is always difficult. He's on the bubble from a point standpoint. He's on the outside looking in right now. If he gets to Kentucky,
Yes.
I know you're following a horse like this. If he gets some pace, he's always going to run. But the other, side of the coin is, with this running style, more likely than not, he's going to get trips like he got in the Arkansas Derby.
Certainly, and that's why he would be a tough one to say I would want 5 or 6 to 1 on him. If he gets in, he's 25 to 1 in that race. Maybe I would find it easier to kind of forgive him there. But I also look at him and say, to me, he's just the kind of horse I want underneath. I want him 3rd or 4th coming from the back. I had a little rant on Twitter. I understand. You see holes in X, Y, and Z. I have no problem if you commit to one of them and it doesn't work and you get stopped. You took a shot and it didn't work. At that point, do not rewrite the course and try to go out around again, because now you're beaten by a length and a half for all the money, and you've probably weaved in and out where it's not going to look like anything if you were seeing a trackus or anything in ground covered. But everybody knows the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You didn't do that. He would have failed a sobriety test. The horse. I'm just saying, point being, I would prefer you to stay the course. If you choose to go outside, stay outside. Don't weave in and out.
After Sonneteer finished 2nd in the Rebel last month, you questioned the quality of the Rebel. Sonneteer ran well again. He made a big late run wide. He didn't have all those traffic issues that Looking at Lee had to deal with. He had to lose some ground turning into the stretch. But he ran again to finish 4th. Does that make you worry about the quality of the Arkansas Derby, at least from runners 5 through 12?
Yes and no, for all the reasons we talked about. It felt like a lot of the horses in Arkansas needed to turn back, that they were probably going farther than they actually wanted to. And Sonneteer, he is truly a one-run closer. He wasn't even on the page for the majority of the race, and then turning for home, he showed up. He finished really well, though. He got that final 8th in 11-3, almost 11-4. I mean, he's very similar to Looking at Lee, where you know what you're going to get. They're going to be taken back. They're going to make the one run. Whether the pace sets up for him or not, that still remains to be seen. Both of them, I believe, are on the bubble. I don't have a problem with a one-run closer that's going to be 30 or 40 to 1.
2-year-old champion Classic Empire is back in the winner's circle. He wins the Grade 1 $1 million Arkansas Derby over an extremely courageous Conquest Mo Money. Classic Empire earns a 94 Buyer's Speed figure, and it's on to Louisville.